One of the important topics for J2E developer competitive type written exams as well as interviews, and also for your academics. What is the difference between solid config and solid context? And if you wanted to answer this question, then you need to know what is solid config and what is solid context. You should identify the situations where to use solid config and where to use solid context. I'll be giving you some real-time examples, and also finally we'll be seeing programs with respect to config as well as context. First we'll see what is solid config, at what places solid config is suitable. With an example we'll be seeing, and then we'll be seeing a program, we'll be executing that program, and then we'll get back and we'll see what is solid context, to what particular situation solid context is best suitable, how to use it. We'll write one program, we'll execute it, and finally we'll discuss the differences between solid config and solid context. There we'll end up the lesson. Before I tell you where exactly the solid config is used in reality, let us consider one simple program, and here the full code of solid class is not written. What I'm meant to tell you is that there is one string called as phone number. Okay, all are routine steps. Remaining things are routine steps. I didn't write the entire program. The main intention of this program is to declare a variable called as phone number. Afterwards, I didn't write the code, but let us imagine the following lines: that phone number is initialized, or the phone number is a value that we get from HTML form that is provided by the user. And if you try to maintain the variables, whatever the user data that is coming from HTML form, you can maintain through a program. Inside the program, by creating a variables like this, like phone number, username, and email ID, you can maintain that data. But frequently changed items, for an example, student's roll number is a thing that can never be changed. Student name or username can never be changed. But there are few things that will frequently changed by the user. For example, email ID, phone number, and current address. Okay, all these things are related to user or related to the application. It's just an example that I have taken with respect to phone number or email ID. But what I wanted to tell you is that wherever there is a situation where you are creating a variable and maintaining the data inside the program, and if the data is meant to be changed, and if the data changes time to time variably, then it's not better to maintain the data inside the program. For an example, you cannot guarantee that phone number is fixed. Phone number of a user can be changed at any point of time. What if you maintain the phone number inside the program? If you maintain phone number inside the program, every time user changes the phone number, then you need to edit the source code. For an example, here if I assign my phone number as 123, later if my phone number is changed to 222, if I change my phone number, then every time I need to revisit this program, I need to change the values, and I need to recompile this program. Recompilation is a very complicated thing in reality. For such a minor thing, what is the minor thing that is happening here? Changing the value of a variable, phone number. For such a small thing, you need not to edit the source code. Being a developer, you should never do that. Servlet is a class that is hosted in the application server. For a simple, silly reason, if you are editing the Servlet code, you can never be called as a good developer. So, being a developer, you need to identify what are the variables that are frequently modified. Please don't place them in the Servlet program. Avoid them. Don't place them in Servlet program. It's not a good idea. So, having a phone number inside this program is not a good idea, because phone numbers might be changed frequently by the user. Email IDs might be frequently changed. Current addresses might be frequently changed. It's not a good thing to place those things in your Servlet programs. Then, what is the right place to place these things? If you are changing the logic of the code, and if you are editing the source code, fantastic. That's a good job, and there is no other alternative. You need to edit the source code if you want to modify the logic. And if you wanted to modify the phone number, here it's a silly reason that you are editing a source code. Okay? I hope you got the point. For such a silly things, you should not edit the source code. What happens, sir? What happens if I edit my source? Don't you know? Every time your source code is edited, your program has to be compiled. Do you know how many steps that program has to undergo during the compilation? Your English statements has to be checked with the syntax. Once if everything is correct, a bytecode, that means a binary code, has to be generated. During the compilation, there are so many internal things that happens without our knowledge. And our programs, as of now, we are learning this language. That's why we are seeing very simple programs. But in reality, the programs are quite bigger. So if you have some 1,000 lines or 2,000 lines of code in which you are changing simple phone number from 123 to 111 inside the program, just to change the value of a variable, if you are editing the source code, then that's going to hurt. Your application server is going to hurt. for such a small thing. You're wasting my complicated time. We should not do that. So you could ask me, sir, then what is the best place to store such kind of variables? If variable is meant to change frequently, then you said that it is not correct way to store that kind of variables in program. Then where can I store? You have an alternative. You have a better alternative. The alternative is web.xml file. Now don't ask me what is web.xml file. Since from our olden days, we have been seeing, it's been around 1 decade that we completed this topic. Web.xml file is a configuration file in an Apache Tomcat. For every application, there will be definitely one web.xml file. For an example, if you have created a project in Apache NetBeans, then you will get one web.xml file. Without using Apache NetBeans also, manually we have done how Servlet has to be uploaded into the Apache Tomcat server manually without the support of Apache NetBeans. There also I told you clearly about web.xml file. It's not a new topic, very old topic that we have done very much earlier. So a simple web.xml file is shown here. Instead of maintaining phone number inside the program, here you can maintain outside the program. So whenever you wanted to change this phone number, fortunately this time you need not to edit the source code. This is the fantastic advantage that you got from the topic Servlet config. Now tell me, where do you use this Servlet config? Don't look at that web.xml file. I'm going to explain you now. Please tell me what is Servlet config? Servlet config, using Servlet config, the variables which are most frequently accessed and modified. If we place those kind of variables inside the program, then we need to compile the program for a silly, such a small silly reason. We need to compile the program. Just for sake of changing the variable content, a developer should not compile the program. Every time compilation has to take place means a new class will be generated. The new class has to be updated in the Apache Tomcat. So these risky tasks should be avoided as much as possible. To avoid this one, what are the variables that are most frequently modified? It's better to maintain them in web.xml file. So any variable which is most frequently accessed and modified is considered to be very important variable. Such kind of variables you please maintain in web.xml file. Now look at this file. Where this web.xml file, inside this web.xml file, how to maintain these values? Using init param. Init param is a tag name. In this tag is maintained, if you look at this tag is maintained inside Servlet tag. You please look at here, inside Servlet tag. Init param is maintained. Init param is open here, init param is closed here. Inside here, you can create an attribute name and an attribute value. Param name means an attribute name. So what is the attribute name? Phone number. What is the value of this one? Phone number 1, 2. So like this, you can create any variable that you want. So I should not call variable here. Do you understand? In web.xml file, it's not a program. It's a simple file. Here I should call this as attribute. What is that one? Attribute. So since this attribute is related to a Servlet class, okay, it's related to one particular Servlet class. Which class? So here I have created one class. You see what is the class name? Context get add, or whatever the class that you have created. Inside this class you have a phone number, and instead of maintaining this phone number inside the program, you wanted to maintain in web.xml file. So this value is related to one particular Servlet class. Inside that class you need to maintain these parameters. Okay, and if I write this, if I show you the entire web.xml file, it looks clumsy. So that's why I have highlighted what are the things that are very much important inside web.xml file. Make sure these parameters should be related to one particular Servlet class. So this phone number and its value is related to one particular Servlet class. Okay, I hope you understand the point. Here you are just replacing, instead of maintaining phone number here, you are maintaining outside. It doesn't mean that when you have maintained outside that anybody can access. No. Only this class can access, because inside web.xml file, inside Servlet class, you are going to keep these parameters such that it will, your Apache Tomcat will allow you only to access these values through that particular Servlet class only. So what tag is used? Init param is used. Inside init param, how many internal tags have to be created? Parameter name, parameter value. So this is related to one particular Servlet class. Fantastic. These are the few things that you need to remember about Servlet config. The first point, the main advantage is that we need not to edit source code whenever we want to change parameter value. This is a fantastic advantage that we got from Servlet config. Very good. Next thing, scope is just within the Servlet class. Absolutely correct, because the phone number is just like a variable. It's a local variable of a Servlet class, which is replaced and kept in web.xml file. So the moment you started executing this Servlet class, whenever your class is initiated, Immediately, a config object is also automatically initiated, and what are the attributes that are related to the Servlet class will be readily made available in primary memory. So the scope is just within the Servlet class. Outside the Servlet class, you cannot access that phone number. Doing so is ridiculous, right? Okay, foolishness. So the scope cannot be given after the Servlet class. Within the Servlet class, only you can access that phone number. Okay, it's just like a local variable. Of course, it's an attribute outside. Whenever you kept that one, in web.xml file, you should address it as an attribute. Now, in web.xml file, init param tag is used inside Servlet tag. This is very, very important, of course. The last point, when Servlet is initiated, config object is created to access init parameters. Yes. Whenever a Servlet is initiated, because your web.xml file is the most important file, because all class related parameters and class related configuration files and everything, including database configuration, is kept in web.xml file. Whenever you have initiated Servlet, immediately what are the parameters that are required for the Servlet will be gathered from web.xml file. Who does that thing and how it is possible? Using config object. Who creates this one? Your Tomcat server, application server creates a config object as soon as the Servlet is initiated. So what are the methods that I'm going to use? Now we are going to see a program. Before that, I need to tell you the most frequently used methods and what is the interface that has to be implemented. These things we are going to see. To create an object, you see here, get Servlet config is a method that we need to execute. Once if we create an object, using that object, we can execute the following methods. By executing the following methods, we can access the value of the phone number that is stored in web.xml file. And like that, you can store any number of parameters. If all parameter names you can access and you can access the values. So how to access them is just by using the inbuilt methods. We'll see what are these inbuilt methods now. Remember, the method name is get Servlet config that is used to create an object. Once the object is created, we are going to using that object reference, we are going to use these methods. The first method is get init parameter string name, the most widely used method, get init parameter. I repeat, get init parameter. This is very, very important and most frequently used method with respect to Servlet config and also with respect to the upcoming topic Servlet context. Please remember this method. I repeat finally by the last time, get init parameter. Okay. The argument is string name. The moment you have provided the string name, that means the parameter name, then you can extract the value. The return type is the value of the parameter. Okay, basically the value, whatever you store in a file or absolutely string, so the return type is string. Once after acquiring the output as the string, and if you wanted to convert them, if you wanted to parse them, you do whatever you want, but the return type is string. Right now, like as in the way you have extracted the value, you can also extract all the names of the parameters that are related to a particular Servlet class. If you wanted to extract, you can do it. So when you are extracting all the names, okay, all group of names, it's a group, the return type is enumeration. It cannot be a simple string, it's an enumeration. Okay, you are extracting all parameters names that are related to a particular Servlet, because for a given Servlet, you can create any number of parameters and each parameter, there will be a value, associated value. And in case if you wanted to look at all the names that are related to the Servlet class, then you can extract it using get init parameter names. And it is executed depends upon the necessity only. But the first one is very, 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 very important and it is used the most frequently used method. The last thing, the Servlet get Servlet name. And in case if you wanted to know the Servlet name, then you can execute this one. Okay, of course, this method is executed using the object reference of the Servlet config. Okay, you can, if you wanted to extract, if you wanted to know the Servlet name, you could ask me, sir, we have Servlet class that is visible directly in the source code, and what is the purpose of knowing Servlet name? I repeat, Servlet name is different from the Servlet class name. In web.xml file, you have two things, Servlet class and Servlet name. For a Servlet class, you can give a different name for the Servlet name. You can give a different name. For the different name that you have given for the Servlet name, you can set the URL pattern. Okay, these three things can be different from each other. That's why at any point of time, if developer wants to see the Servlet name, then they could execute this method, get Servlet name. Fantastic. Now let's execute the program. It means that while executing it, I'll show you the program. And we need to set the value, right? What is the value that we are going to set? Phone number. We are going to see the phone number, right? Let's see source code first and then. First of all, let's see the source code. This is a program name, Servlet config demo.java, that we are going to see. We are going to see a program for Servlet config. Remember that I am going to maintain an init parameter that is related to this particular class. What is the parameter? Phone number. Phone number where I am maintaining, inside the program or outside the program? Outside the program. Outside the program means where? In web.xml file. Right now. So through this program, what I'm going to do is that I'll just get that phone number from web.xml file and I'll show you on the screen. Okay. So these are the required packages, routine steps, and here up to here, everything is routine steps. Okay. Everything is routine because whenever you're writing a solid program, all these steps are routine steps. I don't wanted to explain about these steps. We are already done so many programs. And here is the place where we have created an object called as config using the method called as get solid config. I told you that this method is used to initialize an object. This object is created using a class called as solid config. Solid config is a class that is available in Java x.servlet. Okay, actually solid config is an interface, okay, that is available in this particular package, Java x.servlet. As in the way the generic servlet is part of this one, while I was telling you about generic servlet, even though we don't use the generic servlet, we are using HTTP servlet always. Even though we don't use generic servlet, it is very important to import this package because of these reasons. There are so many interfaces and classes that are related to Java x.servlet. Even the upcoming context is also related to this package. Okay, that's why it's very important to import this package. And as soon as you create this instance config, okay, this method, what it does means it simply returns the object is already available. The config object is readily available. The moment you have initiated this class itself, the object is available. That object reference will be returned to this particular variable config, whose type is solid config. So this variable name, that means this reference name can be anything. And here we refer this thing as an object. Now, using this config, we can extract that value of the phone number. The value of the phone number, config.getInit parameter. I told you that this method is very, very important, and I have provided the name of the parameter as phone number. So inside web.xml file, there should be already init parameter that is created with the name of phone number, and the value should have already assigned. In such case, you can extract that value, and that value is kept in a string variable called as phone number. And here it need not to be phone number, it could be as simple as X or Y, but I'm extracting phone number. As per the application, I maintained the same name. Okay, so phone number. Finally, I'm showing that phone number outside. Now let's execute this program. Very simple program. There's no worries at all. Very simple program. My Apache NetBeans is readily available. Now I need to start Apache Tomcat. I'll be starting the Apache Tomcat. Okay, Apache Tomcat is already running because I can see here. Okay, that is the password that is related to Apache NetBeans. In order to access any service, I need to give password. Alright, now let's start this Apache Tomcat. Apache Tomcat is not running now. Let's start. Prompts for username and password. Say OK. Now Apache Tomcat is up and running. Let me test the status. It is up and running, right? Okay, I can see restart and stop. It means that it is in start mode. Fantastic. Now inside, we have already created, as part of these lessons, we have created a project called as demo project. Inside, I wanted to show you the solid config demo. This is the source code that we have seen just now. Okay, so I am extracting the phone number and I'm displaying the phone number. Okay, that program that I've shown you outside, because you could see very clearly using the text editor, using big font. That's why I used that text editor. But in fact, the same program is already available in Apache NetBeans. This is the program. And in this program, we are going to execute. The moment it is executed, the phone number will be extracted and will be displayed on the browser. Fantastic. Now, I'll show you where to maintain, how to set this phone number, because before I execute this one, I need to set the parameter, right? So here, web.xml file is available in web.inf. I hope you can see here web.inf. Here inside web.xml file will be there. For every project or for every web application, there exists one web.xml file, and you need to edit this file where you need to keep init parameter phone number, and you need to assign some value 1, 2, 3 or whatever the phone number it is. Okay, let's do that. In my case, I've already done, but I'll show you. Okay, so please double click on web.xml file. The moment you have double click web.xml file, you can see the source code, but there's nothing to do with the source code. And you can add like this also, like selecting init param, and you can add it. But you have a support of Apache NetBeans. It has a beautiful interface. You can directly do it. Okay, how means? Go to servlets, because inside servlet you need to create a attribute called as phone number, and you need to assign it. And what servlet? You go to that particular servlet. Okay, my servlet name is servlet context demo. Here, double click on it, and here you can see inside servlet context demo, you can see initialization parameters. Okay, say add. In my case, I have already given a parameter. Okay, so init parameter that was already given. You can say add parameter. When you say add parameter, immediately the two things will be shown to you, and here you please type phone number, and you please give a value here and say OK. Then your parameter, init parameter, is readily available in the web.xml file. So very simple to create the parameter. Okay, this is Servlet config demo. Inside Servlet config demo, okay, already I have created a parameter called as phone number, and its value is assigned as 123. So the moment I execute this program, the 123 is a value of the phone number, which is already given in web.xml file. This value have to be shown outside. Okay, that means on the browser. Let's execute and see whether the things is getting executed or not. This value is related to only my file, my class file, Servlet config demo. Let's run it. Only this class can access this value. Now I'm running this program, Servlet config demo. If everything is perfect, then I should see the phone number as 123, and 123 should be extracted from web.xml file. Fantastic. We got it. We got it, right? Good. Now, in the same way, let's learn what is Servlet context, and where exactly Servlet context has to be used, and what are the frequently used methods, and what is the interface or class that has to be used as part of the program. We are going to see. Servlet context is highly differentiated with Servlet config. Of course, the usage is same, but it is highly differentiated with Servlet config. You need to understand that every developer has to understand where to use Servlet config and where to use Servlet context. Even though nowadays we can find developers who really confuses where to use Servlet config and where to use Servlet context. And if you do not know perfectly where to use Servlet context and where to use Servlet config, then you cannot have an advantages of these particular topics. Now we'll see where to use Servlet context. I'll take you one simple example that with respect to the whole web application, the whole web application has to interact with the database, because in reality, your Servlet classes and JSPs has to interact with the database. Every time you interact with the database, inside the program, you need to maintain the following things: database name, port number, username, password, location of the database server. To maintain all these things, you need to maintain the variables locally in the Servlet program. Okay, you can avoid them just by maintaining this data in web.xml file. Now here is a point where, sir, what makes the difference between Servlet config and Servlet context here? Fantastic. Here you see, you might be having some hundreds of Servlet programs and JSP programs with respect to one single web application. Maybe every program is interacting with the database. Let us imagine that every program or every Servlet class is interacting with the web application. In all those Servlet classes or JSPs, you need not to explicitly declare any variable in order to maintain the database configuration. Once if you give the configuration web.xml file, fantastic. It means that it is global. The data that is available as part of Servlet context, if you keep some data in web.xml file as with respect to Servlet context, then the data is not related to one particular Servlet. It is related to all the Servlets and all the JSPs within your web application. Now tell me, what makes the big difference between Servlet context and Servlet config? Servlet config is the thing that is related to one single class, one single Servlet class. That's all. But what about Servlet context? It's a global data. If you wanted to maintain the global data, then you maintain in the web.xml file. It's not related to one particular Servlet class. It is related to all the Servlet classes and all the JSPs or all the application programs related to one single web application. It is global to web application. That is the main difference between Servlet context and Servlet config. Now the best example is what is the best situation for Servlet context. If you have some global data that has to be maintained for the whole application, then you can maintain in web.xml file. The best example is users authentication. at an application level, at a database level. And database configuration. These things you can maintain in web.xml file. Now the question is that how to maintain that how to create those things in web.xml file. Don't have to worry, I'm going to show you. Before that, you please try to understand. Using servlet context, we can maintain global data which is shared by multiple servlets using web.xml file. This is the meaning. Two examples are written here. Database configurations that we can maintain in web.xml file, and at application level, global data like usernames, passwords of usernames, these variable names like attributes we can maintain in web.xml file. Now we'll see in web.xml file how these things can be done. Since this context is maintained globally, it's not related to one particular servlet, right? I repeat, this is not related to one particular servlet. So this attribute should not be kept in a servlet. It should be kept outside the servlet. That means directly inside the root tag of web app, this is the web.xml file. Directly outside the servlet, only these parameters have to be maintained. These parameters are not related to one particular servlet. Unlike our phone number which is maintained inside the servlet, this should not be maintained inside the servlet. There the phone number is local, just like a local thing to one particular servlet class. That's why it is maintained inside the servlet. But this is global data, right? Just like you are maintaining a global variable in your program. What do? You basically declare that variable outside all the functions. In the same way, outside all the servlets within your web.xml file, this information has to be maintained. That means directly inside web app. Web app is the root tag. Inside the root tag, you need to maintain. What are the two things that you are maintaining? Parameter name and parameter value. This time the parameter name that I have given as a DB name or company name or whatever it is, the value whatever I give here has to be displayed there. Okay, I'll show you in the program. We can create any context parameter. You can give a name to the attribute and we can set the value and we can check it out the values. Fine, this is a way. So to create a servlet config, init param is used, and to create servlet context param is used. This is another difference. Okay, relating to servlet context, these are the things that you need to remember. The main advantage is that we can maintain global data for all application programs. The first advantage. Second thing, the scope is just within the application, web application. Okay, and in case of servlet config, the scope is just within the class, and here the scope is within the application. Okay, you can avoid that keyword. Just it is within the web application. For the whole web application, the data is available. Fantastic. And web.xml file context param tag is used, and whereas in servlet config, init param is used. When application is started, automatically context object is initiated. In previous case, config object is initiated, and here the context object is initiated automatically. In order to access all global parameters, this is initiated. Okay, and it is not when servlet is initiated. You need not to initiate the servlet in order to initiate the context object. As soon as you started the Apache Tomcat, the context object is readily created for you. Okay, you can access the global data at any point of time by initiating a servlet. At any point of time, you can access the global data. In order to make global data available, the context object is created as soon as the Apache Tomcat or your web application is up and running. Whenever you started your web application, that very soon the context object is made readily available to access the global parameter. Now we'll see the important methods. And here, like our previous case, get servlet config was used in the previous case, and here get servlet context is used to create the object. Using this object reference, we can use the following two methods. Get init parameter. When provided the parameter name, we can extract the value. And if you wanted to know all the parameter names that are available as part of the context with respect to any web application, then you can use this enumeration is return type. Get init parameter names. These two functions we have already seen as part of config. The same set of functions can also be used with respect to context. But make sure the context object reference has to be used in order to use these two. Okay. Using that object reference, your servlet will understand whether it has to look at the context or config. Okay. So if you have created an object reference for context, then it looks at the context parameters. And if you have created an object for get servlet config, then it looks at the init parameters. I hope you got the point. Okay. So these two methods are very much similar to the methods that we have seen in the previous case. Now, very important point, the last point. If you don't want to keep permanent data in web.xml file, if you keep any data in web.xml file, the data is permanent because it's a file. The moment you have kept some data and if you say save, then the data is saved and it is permanent, persistent. And if you don't want to do that, and if you wanted to maintain the context only when a web application is running, and as soon as the web application is down, and if you wanted to destroy that data, for an example, I wanted to maintain the database name and database password only when a web application is running, and as soon as the web application is shut down, then if I wanted to destroy it, then you should not keep that data in web.xml file. In such case, you can maintain set attribute and get attribute. Set attribute will create an attribute not in web.xml file, okay, but in the memory. In your main memory, a variable or a location will be created. Inside this value IBM will be kept. And using this get attribute method, you can extract that one, okay. And just like init parameter, which is access the value from the web.xml file, you can access the value that is stored in the main memory. Instead of maintaining data in web.xml file, you can maintain the data directly in the primary memory. It means that whenever you close the web application, automatically this data is erased. But if you keep something in web.xml file, the data is permanent. Even though you close your web.xml file, and after some time, if you have started your web application, then the data is available in web.xml file, because the data in a file can never be erased automatically by your application, okay, unless you do that. The data is persistent. So make sure that in case if you wanted to directly maintain the data without writing in web.xml file, and if you wanted to destroy the data upon closing the web application, then you need to set the data using set attribute, and you need to get the data using get attribute. Fantastic. Now let's write the program. Let's check out the program just like the way that we have done for the config. Now we'll see for context. So this time it is context, right? So go to your web.xml file, and this is your web.xml file. And this time I should not go to servlets. To create init parameter with respect to config, I went to servlets because it is related to servlets. But is context param related to servlet? No, it is global data, which is global to all the servlets. Then how can I create a tag inside servlet? No. Okay. So I need to create a tag at general level. Go to the general, and here you can see context parameters. Click on that context parameters. So in my case, I have created a context parameter already, a company and Google. And if you wanted to create, say add, give the name to the parameter and set a value to it. Now this data is global to all the servlets. You can access that using just by creating an object for servlet context, you can access it. Now let's see the program. And here is a program that is readily available. And in this case, I'll show you. It is very much similar to the program that we have seen just before, like servlet config. The entire code is very much similar except this line. Because here we are going to create an object which is type of servlet context. In the previous case, that was servlet config. It is servlet context because you wanted to extract context parameters. And the object name is context. Using this object name context, I'm extracting a parameter, init parameter company. The company is the name of the parameter. Upon giving this as a parameter to the getInit function, getInit parameter function, then it extracts the value of the argument company, from where it looks at the entry in the web.xml file and finds the parameter name company. What are the value that is assigned to the company will be extracted and will be shown to us. Okay. So you can directly see that the company value is not a thing that is available. Its company is not a variable that is available in your program. It's an attribute that is available in web.xml file, and its value is also associated with the web.xml file. So this value is checked in the web.xml file. Upon finding this parameter company inside web.xml file, it extracts the value and shows for us out.print welcome n. So n is the place where I stored this value of the company. Now upon executing this thing, so what is the thing that we have given here? Web.xml file, the company is the parameter name. Okay, Google is the parameter value. So your program has to open web.xml file, look at the entry company and extract the value Google, and it has to show on the Google Chrome. That means on the browser, the output should be available. Let's see whether our program is doing the same thing or not. Run it. All right, you can see here, welcome to Google. Google is the value of the parameter. We have extracted that value from web.xml file. This value is extracted from web.xml file. We are done. Now we have seen servlet config, where to use servlet config, the program for servlet config. We are done. We have seen this importance of servlet context, the situation where servlet context has to be used, how to use, and we have executed the program. We are done. Now let's look at the differences. What are the differences between solid config and solid context? In short, a table is already available to you. It's very, very simple. Because now I don't have to show you any table or anything else. I need not to tell you any point explicitly, because you yourself can differentiate. Okay. In short, we'll see. The scope is just within the solid class with respect to solid config. Yes, we know that point. And scope is within the web application. Fantastic. Yes, we know that. And solid configuration is just local to the solid class. Of course, this point is very much relevant to the first point. And of course, it is global to all the classes and JSPs. Right, we know this point. And the third point, init parameter tag is used. Yes, we have already used this one. Context parameter tag is used in case of solid context. Yes, we have used that one. Advantage is source code need not to be edited. Yes, whenever there is a change, then we can directly go to web.xml file and we can change the configuration or values right in the web.xml file without editing source code. The same advantage is also there here, but here the global data, which is related to all the solids, you need not to maintain in the solid, inside the solid programs. You can keep it outside in the web.xml file, so that all the solid program source code you need not to edit. Okay, for an example, let's say this is the biggest advantage we had with solid context only, because if you have some configuration that has to be maintained, if you have some hundreds or thousands of solids related to web application, and in each solid page you need not to maintain the database name. For an example, let us imagine that you are maintaining a database name inside the solid, inside all the solids. Unfortunately, database name is changed. Then that all 1000 solid source codes you need to change. Do you understand? Quite complicated thing. What if you maintain everything in web.xml file without maintaining anything in solid class? Then absolutely at one point, at one place, web.xml file, you can change. Those changes that means you not to change the source codes. Okay, it means that whatever the global data is there, you please maintain web.xml file. You don't maintain anything inside the solid class, either global data or local data. If they are going to be changed frequently, then maintain outside in web.xml file. If it is local data, local to the class, then use solid config. And if it is global data, use solid context. Done. It is possible for us to host and upload many demanding courses on this YouTube channel, only if you support us by subscribing. Please subscribe, switch on the notification bell, stay connected, and enjoy learning.